So we took a trip to the switch. We can't talk about where it is.
Secret.
Secret. Why is it secret?
Well, a lot of it is, we really work to mitigate concerns that could cause problems in the network. And, when you look at the Network Operations Center, it's very sensitive equipment. There is no place for customers to come in and pick up batteries and things like that. So it's a little bit better. Imagine somebody looks at Google, or like me, navigate to the Verizon store, shows up there. They're really not, designed to help them. Those are the highly technical people who are watching the network, making sure things are working, that you have data services, that text messages are going, that the call volumes are routed good. So really, they do a great job at that. We kind of keep them hidden in a little facility.
Yeah. What's interesting about it conceptually, and I've been thinking about it ever since, is this sort of dual universe sort of thing. It's different. It's different than what you would expect. It's different than, even if you had a certain level of sophistication in this, you would not quite expect what it is. And, for most people who, just see their cell phones, they have no clue that you have to have this kind of facility to make that happen. This is the back end. This is the real deal. It's almost like an underground kind of thing where, there are people there that never come into the light. They just make everything work for us. And that's the remarkable thing about the switch, that it's really part of us, and yet we don't know about it.
Very, very sophisticated people, and a lot of pieces to make it work. I mean, we look at the cell phone, and that's kind of that old saying, the tip of the iceberg, the big picture's underneath. So a lot of equipment to make it work, and our focus is really, on always what if. Because things happen.
Sure.
We always hope nothing happens, everything's good. But we're in the middle Pacific Ocean. We could get, heavy rains. You can get, we saw what happened with the tsunami warning. They were mild incidences, but we need to prepare, especially in Hawaii, to make sure everything is set up to give us the best possibility to deal with what ifs.
Yeah, and another assumption in there, is a sort of a fundamental point, is that, 20 years ago you had the Motorola brick, and not very many people had them, and people's lives were not nearly as inextricably intertwined with cell phones as they are now. And you could get along if you left your brick somewhere, but now it's quite different. Now people's lives are intertwined with the cell phone. They keep all of their important information on it. They make all of their communications and keep all their calendars and task lists and email, and they can live on the cell phone. I know this from personal experience, and I know it from your experience too. And so that it's mission critical for a lot of people in business and non-business situations all day long. Therefore, you really have to have these layers of security and what ifs in order to protect them, because if it goes down, for most people I know, it would be a flaming disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about it. I always tell the joke, and I joke about it, but it's true. If I took off without my wallet, I got friends at work. I'll borrow $5. Hey, can you buy me bentos? I'll buy next week or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But without my phone, and which is kind of a negative. I don't remember everybody's number. I got 3,000 phone numbers in there. I need to be able to go, hey, where's Jay? And also just my calendar. I mean, I live and die by my calendar. And so those things, I really think they've come to a point where they're not really just toys. They're very useful tools. They help us stay in touch with people. They help us create efficiencies, and really kind of help organize our lives. So you think about, I use a program called Evernote, which I love because I put all my notes in the cloud, and I can literally say, I met someone a year ago, and I get a email from them, boom, and I remember who he is. So there's so many tools that are wrapped up in these mobile devices. But then again, our job as the carriers to make sure that the cell sites are up, that there's battery backups if power goes down, that we put those generators in place to say, what if we had an extended outage, 2-3 days? We don't ever wish anything bad to happen, but things can.
Yeah. Well, another fundamental, sounds like to me, is that that old rule is that things will be half the price and twice as powerful every time you look, like in computer chips in general. And I think that certainly goes with cell phones. I mean, that's certainly the experience we've all had with cell phones over the past, say, 5 years with the advent of the smartphone. I mean, things have sort of gone to the moon in the past 5 years, and it's multiples every time you look. And it's likely to be multiples, logarithmic multiples, in the next 5 years or less. And so that means that you have to plan those contingencies for the existing state of affairs, but also for the future, which will be much more important than it is today.
Yeah, and definitely. And technology changes. And I think, I consider myself blessed that we are in a competitive environment. I won't go back and tell stories, but we can all think of companies in the past that ruled the world, didn't really have competition, and they're gone today.
Yeah.
I think a lot of sometimes when you look at the companies in the past that there was no competition. You never really got anything extra, but I think you look at just the situation between Apple and Google. They drive themselves to excellent. Apple comes out with this great feature. Well, Google responds and does something a little better. And we're seeing this time when the consumer really benefits from all the things that these devices can do, whether it's GPS, whether it's video conferencing with a friend on the phone, talking to the grandbaby that's 2,000 miles away, having a calendar, or just being able to really be in touch with people. All those are just so simple anymore that they really can affect your life.
As well as many things that we can't even think of today, right? I mean, there'll be things in the next year that you and I, especially you and all of your smart, appreciation of technology, even you can't think of them, Ed, but they'll be here.
If I did, I would figure it out and be rich. But it's sometimes I'm a little too focused on now. So,
well, the idea about looking at this not as one-dimensional, but looking at it as a kind of a cube, in 3 dimensions. That is, looking at the competition to see what they're doing and making very sure that you're not, a sort of casualty of changing times, of not being nimble enough. You've got to be very nimble, and you got to figure out how your thing is going to work as against their thing in the same developmental pattern. This is complicated. On the other hand, there's some smart guys at Verizon, I think. Yeah. They work on this kind of stuff.
There's guys that are way, way smarter than me, and they sit, and some of those guys, they sit in that back room, and that's all they think about is, well, how would we know if there was a water leak? How would we know, if this happened? And they have a lot of pieces in where we proactively look at the network. We're not necessarily waiting for Jay to call up and go, hey, my phone's not working. We're really looking how do we continue to process the network, test the network, see what it's doing. And there's a lot of times we mitigate things before the customer ever even knew it happened. So that whole piece of disaster recovery, failover, having equipment that's mirrored, so one side goes off, boom, it flips over. Customer doesn't know. Now we know, but then we're able to resolve those things before the customer sees it. And really, my philosophy is if you have transparency to the customer, you've won. If you have something break, no one knew except the little red lights and your manager, boy, you really did a good job of thinking, the possibilities through.
Yeah, and that poor bugger doesn't even realize that you're covering for him and making it all happen. He doesn't realize there's a switch out there of the level of sophistication that we have here. Anyway, talk about the people at the core of it. One of the things on the tour that you took me on last week that was stunning was the center of the center. It was. It was the
core,
the sanctuary of sanctuaries. Yeah. So right next to the actual switch, which we're going to talk about all of this, but there was this room of guys, 3 or 4 of them, and they were watching everything. That was, God, I wanted to be one of them. Don't you want to be one of them?
I love what I do, but definitely, it is important that as networks grow, that you need to be proactive, because sometimes we learn hard lessons. That's the thing of digital. As technology grows, we've been very fortunate to roll out 4G LTE here. It's an amazing technology, but I'll tell you that there's growing pains with anything as you grow it. These new smartphones integrate into 4G and all the things with it. So you need people who are constantly aware. and really looking at that core of the network. And what's interesting is when you look at that network operation center, those are also tied to our network operation centers on the mainland. So somebody can instantly look at everything and alarm, fix, repair, failover to those things 24/7. And really that's what we've come to this world. You don't, used to be you used your work phone Monday from 7, and Friday came off, turn it off, don't call me, I'm off. Doesn't work that way anymore. So we really need that communication. And I think in the wireless space, we definitely, I see many people who don't even have home phones anymore. So we really are becoming that primary point of connection, and then that reliability that when you need it, when you have to get to call and get a doctor, whatever, it needs to be there. It needs to work. It needs to work reliably.
So I'll give you my recollection word picture of what that was like. There were maybe 4 or 5 people in this sanctuary of sanctuaries. There were computer monitors all around the room, running sophisticated monitoring programs on all kinds of systems. No two were the same, all different, all checking out different things. It reminded me of the Hawaiian Electric, control room out in Kapolei, which is sort of like that. Lots of monitors. Doesn't take too many people to watch them all, but they watch everything that way. And they can not only check on things, but actually change things if things are need to be a little tuned. And that was the way it was in Kapolei, and that was certainly the way it was in the sanctuary of sanctuaries, right next to the main brain and the switch. God, that was something. Anyway, I was very impressed. They were sharp as a tack, too, all of them. And you could tell that, they were sort of glued to the data, glued to the monitors, making sure that they were aware of every change on every screen. It was really interesting to see that.
And remember, those guys have a whole fleet of people out there who are out there actually at the cell sites running alarms, and because there's a lot of alarms that aren't critical. If a battery, if a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, which kind of fails over, there's warning equipment on there to say, hey, we may have an issue, battery needs to be changed. So there's a whole fleet of those people who are out managing the network daily, whether that's, somebody tries to steal the copper or whatever that is. Those guys, you have that whole fleet of people out there who are managing feed on the network, but then you have these guys who are kind of supervising, making sure that they're getting the right resources out to the right time.
Yeah, totally mission critical. You felt it walking all the way through the switch facility, but certainly you felt it there. That these guys, had a huge burden, huge responsibility, and that they accepted it. But let's sort of take a tour, if you will, through the facility now. A word tour.
Okay.
So we come in and we find a very brand new, clean as a pin facility. We find a facility where literally you could eat off the floor. It was that clean. And we find moisture sensors everywhere in the facility, in the possibility that there would be a leak or rainwater or anything gets on those floors, then your guys in the sanctum would know about it, and somebody could do something before the water level rose to a level that would be a problem for the equipment. And lots of tunnels and passageways going from one element to the other, each element separated and secured from all the others. I've never been in a building like that. I mean, I doubt the Pentagon has that level, that level of security. What do you think?
I've never been in the Pentagon. I'm waiting for an invitation, ready to go. But a lot of it is you think about that equipment, and we have redundant equipment, and you want to make sure you have the human element. People make mistakes, and not intentionally, things happen. We do have, like you saw, very clean, no food in these areas, no water. But, you do need to let people in to service equipment, so you want to make sure that it's segregated. If you have 4 levels, that, only one person's in one area, that worst thing can happen is you lose one. Well, you got, you only need one, but you got 4. Mm-hmm. So if one goes down or someone makes a mistake, you can contain it to that area. We look really highly about things. I mean, it's an electronic facility, a lot of electronics. You could potentially have, fires. There's all kinds of things. So you really have to think about isolating things out. How do you control We work very closely with the fire marshal to make sure these different areas are fully separated, that you could have a small incident somewhere, which we've never had. But you really got to think about the fact that, okay, what if one of your providers has to come in? Does that give them free reign of it? Well, we trust them, but really that overall picture says that we have a very careful procedure so that everything is well documented, well taken care of. And as you can see, just walking in, I know you've had experiences with telco and wires. We pride ourselves that everything's labeled, where it's coming from, where it's going from, that's tracked. There's everything that has to be put in. Someone else has to validate it. So it really helps you in a time if something goes out, you're not guessing. You know exactly what's connected to what, what's the failover path. And it really cuts down that time to resolution because you're not guessing at anything. You're going in saying, okay, this point and this point, pull the fiber, replace it, or replace the equipment on the end of it.
Yeah, I remember that room. I think that was one of the first rooms we saw where you connected with the telephone companies, the carriers, and the carrier representatives were allowed into that room, but that's the only room they could get into, and they could see where their wires were being relayed into the switch itself, and that was neat as a pin too, with air conditioning and fire retardant devices. Everything was plastic, as I remember, plastic conduits. So
for
that
the fiber, yeah,
and fiber for everything. And the remarkable thing about that room was that the actual equipment, the electronic equipment, was not all that big. Because we're talking about high tech here, we're talking about electronics. It doesn't have to be all that big. And the other thing is that there was plenty of room, and this is throughout the entire switch facility. There was room to double it. In case there are more, carriers seeking more connectivity, you could easily double what was in that room. So there's plenty of room to grow. Yeah. That was a very impressive room. That was the first room we saw, as I recall.
Well, and we got to think, you talked a little Moore's law. Technology is moving very quickly, so we do, we have a very strong plan to support customers who have older equipment. Because some people keep their phones 5 years. We don't.
Not you and me. No.
6 months, we got to have a new one. But, we have to take care of them. And then you see the new technologies today. We have the 3G, which is amazing. We have 4G LTE. But really, we've already started working on LTE Advanced. We don't talk that a lot, but that's the next generation. And, there's always room. We look at what Apple's done to innovate. No one saw that coming. I can tell you the competitors didn't see that come on. So we want to make sure that we're always positioned to give our customers options. So we support all the platforms, and we support all the operating systems, whether that's Windows, whether that's Mac, whether we have nice devices that do Wi-Fi. So if you want to do Linux or any breed you want, so we want to be able to react quickly. So as new technologies come, we can bring them in, put them out to our customers, and we're not scrambling going, where's it going to go?
Well, in a competitive market, you can do nothing less than that because people are so wild about their phones and about new phones. They got to wait online all around the block for the new phone, just like I did.
I remember that day.
September 8th it was. It was a Tuesday.
And now the Razor on the 11th. It never stops.
Anyway, people are so wild about the new phones that Verizon, you have to stay in touch with that. You can't let that get away from you for a minute. You've got to do that.
Well, and I think it's consumers want choices. You look at some of the new phones that have come out that they have the nice slide out keyboard. Some people still they want to push buttons, and that's fine. Some people are totally fine with the screen that's all touch. And you're seeing the technology, and I think we're still seeing that. We haven't seen that total sweet spot. So you look at tablets. They're kind of going back and forth trying to find out the perfect size. You see that on smartphones. When is a screen too big? Well, they're kind of, you see,
true, yeah.
You see this and they get a little bigger, a little bigger. Oh, that's too big, and go back. So that the innovation's nice, but it really gives customer choices because, how I use my phone may not be exactly how, someone else's, their mother uses the phone. So I think it really gives them that flexibility to find what benefits their life. And that's the beauty of these devices is they're really more than just a phone. You can find the applications and the uses that make it personal to you. and it really puts it into something that becomes, I really, it's part of my life. I think I go with withdrawal. If you hide my phone, I'm like, I start.
Yeah, yeah. And then going forward, you know that every single thing you do can be improved, can be mechanized and facilitated and automated by some app on one of these phones. And I mean, there's money to be made figuring out apps. By the way, I think that Android is easier to make apps. So I'm going to try. I'm going to talk to you afterward about making apps. But anyway, you know, this is going to sweep all of our lives into the phone, everything that happens, and therefore this becomes just as mission critical as you would imagine it to be. It is just as important as electricity itself. It is the backbone of our communication. And I agree too that in 5 years' time you're going to see very few landlines anymore. You know. So anyway, so this facility is right up to that standard. It really is. I was so impressed with it. And then we went into the I guess the power supply part of the switch, and there were some huge transformers there. Can you talk about what they deliver and how they operate?
Well, we work very closely with our local utility here, and HECO's a great partner, because you have to really think what could happen. We were here, you never know. You could have a lightning strike, you could have a flash flood. So we're always looking at the fact of how do we get power? Can we get where's the power going to come from? What if this one fails? And that's that whole piece saying things do break. Especially in Hawaii, I think it's a little different than the mainland. In the mainland, you'd all have it here next day air. Well, you saw some of that equipment. Some of that equipment, you probably couldn't get it on a plane, and you're not going to get a spare part anytime soon. So we really work with thinking, okay, what could fail? How do we have it? And I got to tell you, it's expensive. A lot of equipment in there, and you saw some of those. Some of the stuff I can't even pick up, and they're not that big. I mean, it's the size of a little box, but very thick. And so we really go, hey, what would happen if we lost one of our power providers? What would happen if we lost both of them? How do we have that sustainability? Can we keep this facility running for weeks without an electrical grid? We've seen some places that have been hit really hard. We learned a lot on Katrina. We are a top provider in Florida, and let me tell you, Florida is a great testing ground for just Mother Nature throwing anything that it can find at us. And we've learned, how to make these buildings so that they're waterproof, that, flying debris doesn't take out something mission critical, that you really have looked through all those pieces that, if something happened. Now, we're very fortunate. I feel fortunate on the Pacific side. We don't quite get brutally hit that bad.
Not yet.
But if you ever want fun, if you go on to YouTube, there is the Verizon Wireless Super Switch there, the Florida one too, and you can watch that. It's a public video. But you really see how they think about those things, because that's really where you learn. You put it together, you think of something. There's always something someone forgot. But do you really, when you learn that, do you write it down? Do you put a policy in place so it doesn't happen again?
But you got to learn. That's the other thing about all these contingency plans you describe. It sounded to me, walking around with you and Cedric, who was there.
Smartest guy.
Really, really smart guy. Boy, does he owns that facility in every way you can own a facility. I mean, every inch of it. An amazing man. He's bonded and wedded to that facility for his whole life. And he put it together. I think he had something to do with putting it together anyway.
I think he's joined to that place.
Yeah, joined at the hip. Anyway, walking around, you get the impression that all these contingent systems, they're based on real life experience. That you go back into the history of electronics and where they may have failed, where some external force may have damaged the system, brought it down. You factored all of that in. I mean, every single calamity you could think of, somebody's factored it in. And that's what you got to do with a mission-critical system like this, for sure. So in the case of power, you had a number of layers of power. You had HECO to start. You had two large and independent diesel generators that would run on diesel or biofuel, too. I was impressed with that. And you could turn them on, and they would run for a while, as long as the fuel held out, I suppose. And then you had, on top of that, you had these really interesting batteries. That's that's 4 levels of power altogether. So you would go from one to the other, and gee, I mean, if we had to go through all 4 of them, I think this place would be in really sad shape for other reasons, you know.
And we have 2 more layers we didn't even touch.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So.
Well, how much you want to talk about that?
but I think that's what it is, because things do happen. You know, and you got to think about isolating the equipment from, you know, when electrical systems go down and come up. You know, they just like in your house, they say, hey, turn it off, make sure you have a surge protector. We got much bigger equipment because there's so many hundreds of connections in there, but we got to really look at those pieces and look at the survivability. You know, we do live in a hurricane zone. We don't want them. We've already said, hey, don't come here. You know, we're very fortunate that we looked at, when we built that facility, that it's out of the tsunami range. Liquefaction tests to make sure that, you know, where the fault lines are, that we're not there. I mean, you know, we can see the Earth's a beautiful place, but when it's temperamental, if you haven't really thought through that. So I think that's where those pieces coming in and saying, okay, hey, we could run this for weeks and weeks on what we have here. You know, what is our process to get fuel? You know, and being a utility puts us in a great place to make sure that we're able to maintain that, because so many people today, their primary communication now is that device on their hip, and you know they're not at home, or they're out and about, and they need that connectivity.
Yeah, and going forward, I mean, I can tell you my own experience. I'm going to be more and more dependent on it because I want to be mobile. I want to be able to get around. And yet I want to have everything I need to know right there in my pocket, and I can do that now. But I can't do it unless that switch is working. So, you know, the end of the line on the power were batteries, and I was just fascinated with the batteries you had, because batteries are kind of HECO's problem too. You know, to have batteries that will work overnight and for some length of time. And you were using a kind of a chemical battery. In a room which I thought was actually twice the size of what you needed. It was quite a large room, and that if necessary, all you had to do was duplicate what was on one side of the room, put it on the other side of the room, and now you had twice as much battery capability. That was very impressive from a point of view of the last ditch that I saw. Maybe there were other things I didn't see.
And it's those layers and isolating, especially because you were in the core room. In the core room, we really want to isolate that. We don't want it to ever feel, you know, brownouts or peaks in power or, you know, momentary failure. You know, you've seen that in your computer. Just get a blip of power and it's gone. You got to reboot. You lost what you're doing. So there's very smart people, much smarter than me, that's all they do is go around and learn from, you know, our nationwide network and issues and, you know, snowstorms, which we don't have those unless you're on the Big Island by.
Yeah.
But really, how do you put these pieces together to make sure that, you know, they don't fail, and if they do, the system self-heals it so you can fix it without a customer impacting.
Yeah, well, you know, talk about customer impact. I mean, take the worst case analysis, take a power failure, take some kind of, you know, bad weather, and you guys can keep running for a while with all your redundant systems in terms of power. But I have my cell phone, which will run for one day. So I have to have a way to recharge my cell phone. If there's a power failure, you'll have a great network going, but I won't be on it because I don't have any power in my phone. Got any advice on that?
Yeah, I definitely, you know, there's a lot of great agencies out there. I know I've downloaded a lot because they really do have some good things for family planning for hurricanes and stuff. And, you know, you think about food. Most of us, if you're like me, my refrigerator's, you know, gets full, then it's empty, it's full, it's empty. But really a plan, and you know, you should have non-perishable food. You should have water, blankets, you know, little things like your medicine. Do you have a few, you know, days of medicine?
Sure.
And with your device, you know, they make devices like the iGo, which is it's a small box, and we sell it in our stores, but you can get it at any of the retail stores. Or, you know, big box electronic stores, but it's a box that you charge, and you could charge your phone 4 or 5 times. You know, there's a couple of battery companies that sell them in the store where you could just have batteries. You put the battery in this device.
Takes it from the batteries into the phone.
Into your phone. And definitely, you know, I tell everybody, you know, have a car charger, and you should really probably have 2, one that you use every day, but one in the trunk. just in case something happens. And definitely, if you're in a really remote area, maybe, a generator. And one of the things we try to do in these events, if you've seen, you can look on that YouTube channel, we actually go out and put charging stations out there so customers can come in and charge and be able to stay up. But that's really should be part of your family or your business plan.
Sure, this is
what would
important.
happen?
Yeah, it's important as anything else for a hurricane or some other calamity. To be able to get back on the phone. I mean, it would be a real shame that here we have the switch operating just fine, days, weeks, who knows how long after the calamity when there's no power, and your phone doesn't work. If you could get your phone to work, that would really help a lot in terms of getting information and communicating to sort of to validate things and to get a reality test on what was going on. You wouldn't be sure of your television, you wouldn't be sure of your radio. Even if they could broadcast. Even if they had the temporary power to broadcast, do you have the power to receive?
Yeah.
But with your phone, you could bypass those problems. So I think in emergency situations, this is the most important piece of equipment you want to have.
Yeah, I recently worked with a school, and that's what one of the schools thinking about, what would happen, and they have somebody in their school, and I can't say who, but matter of fact, they have your phone with the laptop because they can edit their website using Firefox that has a full version of Firefox. So literally wherever they are, that person can take his phone, plug it into the laptop, log in, say, hey, school's closed for whatever, dignitaries or the road's closed or a pipe broke or whatever, to be able to delineate out, send those emails out to, parents. And I think that's really something that probably as a group, I know personally, I'm very fortunate. My wife's the one that plans all that stuff out. The guy that's, oh, really? We should have brought food, which keeps me alive. But, part of that is, what is your plan? What is your business plan? How do you stay afloat? And that's kind of one of my jobs, meeting with them. What is your disaster recovery? What is your continued operation plan? To make sure your customers are taken care of, your employees are safe, and we all need to think about that. So I'm glad you brought that out because it is something that a lot of people think about. If you got 1 or 2 days on your phone, I lived through the one in Seattle when we had that real snap freeze, and the snow came down, broke trees, and the power was off in some places for 14 days. And it really brings you back to basics because there's no food in the store. How are you going to charge your phone and things like that. So it's a really good part of your plan in your business and personal life to make sure you've thought that through.
Yeah, and your data. Your data is also being protected.
Right.
So whatever you have on the phone, you have somewhere else. This is very valuable. So returning to the facility for a moment. In the center part of this fairly large building is the switch. And people who don't know, what is a switch? Well, it must turn the lights on and off or something. But can you describe for us, Ed, what is a switch?
Tens of millions of dollars of really sophisticated equipment. So whether that's equipment that does what's called call processing, which we still kind of have that old school where you think back to Mayberry days where someone plugged in a line to this phone and this phone across connect.
Sure, I remember that, yeah.
It hasn't really changed a lot in circuit switch. It's all done digitally in a microsecond now. But there's definitely that equipment. So I'm on my phone in Hawaii. I make a phone call. I call somebody in France or Florida. I mean, we don't even think about it. It's a millisecond. So all that equipment that puts those calls together, looks what's the best path, ensures the integrity, switches that. All the services like text messages, we deliver billions, not millions, billions of text messages because people are using that for communication today. Hey, where are you? What time are you going to be here? Let's go get some dinner. So that equipment's there, picture messaging, and then you have like 3G data that people live on for their applications and being able to connect to work, VPN, 4G. Those services we really kind of expect to be able to be connected wherever we are. So that room has, many different mission critical servers, devices, and appliances that make sure all those features. And of course, everything there has to have redundancy. So if you got one, you got to have two. So that when one, if one breaks, immediately the system says, okay, let's go get two fixed and let's go to two and figure out what happened to one.
And right next to it is that control room with all those guys watching over the switch.
Yeah. You got Corey and Doug, and they're going, hey.
I have a T-shirt that says, I saw the switch. After a while, everybody would know what that was. So, in the switch, you talk about all these things, that are relatively new that, 5 years ago were really unthinkable. You sending so many photographs now. Everybody's sending photographs and sending documents. Everybody's sending text messages. Isn't it that there are more text messages, more bandwidth dedicated to text messages now than to voice? Or it's closing anyway. It's getting close.
We definitely, it is interesting over the last few years, and this is public information. Voice traffic is no longer growing, and the reason people are choosing to communicate a lot of different ways. They are doing video chat or IM, instant messaging, picture messaging, Facebook, all these things. People are, I think they're communicating more, and I think people stay closer now. I was on a Google Talk call with a friend of mine who's in Raleigh, North Dakota this morning, and I'm looking at his face, he's looking at mine. Those are the kind of things. To me, that's a quality of life. I'm not going to fly out to see him. It's expensive. It's getting cold there.
And this doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, you definitely have a little data plan, but I mean, just the ability to increase your life. My grandbaby is in California. Wish I could see her daily, but that transporter technology's been delayed. So, I can jump on there and still interact and be part of her life. So people are communicating more. They're just using other avenues. So we definitely have to look at the capacity, the network design. Is it built for growth? You think we had APEC here this week. We typically have 75 to 125,000 people on the islands visiting, which we'd love to have them. Welcome, come again. And then you bring in $25,000 for 25,000 people for APEC and all their groups and stuff. So you really have to constantly looking to make sure you have the right equipment deployed, the right capacity, the right services, and it is a daunting job. I give those guys a lot of respect.
Well, Kurt Tong in the morning paper said that Hawaii had established itself, that means Honolulu, I think, had established itself as a good meeting place, a good place to do business, a good place to have conferences like APEC. That was nice of him, and that was impressive. But I think part of that is the cell phone service, don't you? Those guys are on the cell phone all day long.
Yeah, maybe the ocean and the food, but we're happy to play our part. We definitely work very closely with the local government and DOD and make sure that we are prepared to take care of them. And it's a privilege to have them. There are some great country leaders, and we live on tourism and trade. I mean, I don't fix my own air conditioner, and I have to buy an appliance. It's go pick it up. So it's good to see those kind of growth, and it's great to be part. And I think it's good to delineate Hawaii that, hey, we're friendly, we want you here, but we are very tech savvy. I think a lot of people tell me that all the time. Oh, you live in Hawaii, you must surf. Well, I do that, but we are very technically focused people and very much early adopters of using technology, whether that's GPS routing or tracking. A lot of businesses are really getting into saying, how can I use this stuff to get a better customer experience, to take care of my people, to make my employees more safe, and really to lower expenses. And really that all comes back to being able to get real-time data or getting real data in the field.
Yeah, so did you make special arrangements for APEC? Was it necessary to establish, additional redundancies or special connections to protect the circuits for the APEC people?
We did definitely do some things. We do work very closely with the Department of Defense and especially with the EOCs. We were fortunate to be involved in the tsunami planning that happened a while back, and I think we all look. The government works very hard to make resources, but really we have government resources, we have community resources, but we also have these commercial resources. So we work with them to make sure that we're not overlapping and that we're really providing things to help the community. We definitely did some things here for this event because there's a lot of people, more than expected at the convention center. We do roll out cows and colts. If you've ever been out to one of the games at the stadium, definitely
right.
40,000.
Can you define a cow and a colt?
Yeah, so we have a cell on wheels and a cell on truck. One's a towable. One's actually a truck you drive in, fully built cell site. We use those. You think when you go by the stadium on an average day or a weekend, you add 40,000 people to that for the games and things. Well, that's a bigger load.
You'll be phoning back the scores to their favorite bookie or something.
Is that what I tell people? Did you see that? No. But definitely, we continue to always make sure if there's going to be a huge crowd of people, your network is built to handle peak capacity plus quite a bit. But there are times that you could see where, you're going to have thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of people. So we work to deploy additional assets. Matter of fact, if you go out to the Big Island, out by the volcano, that cell site is actually a portable one. Now, we really don't move it, but because of the lava flow, that could change.
Sure.
That,
You'll
that's
be able to get around.
yeah. You got, hundreds of $1,000s of equipment. You don't really want to watch lava melted into the ground. Yeah. So literally that could be moved out, moved to another location. And our team's always looking at how do we improve coverage, and then how do we do spot coverage. Maybe there was a fire. We don't really have those, but in California, a lot of our teams are a lot of times going out and deploying. Because you think you got a campground out here that maybe has 50 people. Now here's a fire, 6,000 people show up. Well, we definitely can bring in additional assets, put up a temporary cell site, one of those cows or colts that's got its own generator, give them amazing service. And then when it's done, just go back to the average network, be when all those people leave.
So this has an antenna on the top. It has a generator inside, and it's part of a mesh technology. I'll ask you to describe what that is, which you just turn on the switch and it triangulates where it is and connects with all the other nodes that are nearby, and now it's enhancing the network that way, right?
It can. I mean, there's several different type of technology we use. We seem to be affectionate. We use farm animals. rats. Those are repeaters on a trailer. Those are designed to that can actually just extend a cell site. Your colts and your cows are literally a complete cell site, so those can be microwaved. Those can be hauled back like with fiber. We work with fiber providers in times like that. We really have to look at where it's at. So if you're in the middle of the forest, your options would have to be what are the best options to connect it back. Could it be, can it be microwaved to the local cell site and then ran back in fiber? Do we need a fiber run? That's what those guys, that do at the super switch. They really spend time saying, hey, something happens, somebody calls us and says, hey, we have this big incident or whatever it is. And just like the tsunami, didn't seem like a bit, but there was a lot of government assets that were rolled out here, and we were able to work with them and make sure that they're prepared and able to work. Because they don't have an office. They're working with their laptop and their wireless device.
It's right there.
At the harbor, at the boat dock, or wherever that is.
So, do you think that in the future we'll have more cell sites in a given area, in a given geography, or less, more powerful, more high-tech ones? Where is that going? Do you see construction ahead, or maybe improvement in the technology, or both, or neither?
I definitely see improvement in the technology. With like LTE, it uses MIMO, which is multiple antennas. Those multiple antennas can do a couple things. They can increase your speed, or in fringe areas they can steady that data stream. It is funny because smartphones everybody carries them now, so definitely that's a better load on the network. And I think it's just kind of a mixture of looking, how many people are in the area. There are some times that you are building for capacity, because there's so many people. Let's say a high rise gets moved, or you're building a new housing project, and other times it's just a matter of doing antennas and enhancements and things like that. But that's a full-time job for the network team. Where's the coverage? Where are people moving? You think with some of the military, if they bring in a whole new set of barracks or something like that, what's that load going to look like on the network? So they spend a lot of time evaluating and deciding what that looks like.
Well, talk about competition. We talked about it earlier. I mean, it seems to me that the network company like Verizon that's going to succeed in the long term through any competitive period is going to be the one who delivers uninterrupted telephone and data service. And so that's really important to have those cells working at high speed and reliable, in every eventuality. And well, that's why I'm with Verizon, if you want to know. I don't want to lose my calls.
Well, what I appreciate, and one of the things, Verizon hangs its hat on network reliability. And a lot of people may look at that and say, oh, it's marketing. You can say anything in marketing, but you've had the privilege of going through our facility. You see how we plan and how we build, how we look and approach that network build, and how we say what would happen if. And I really think that's a differentiator. There's good competitors in the world. We're very happy to see our competitors there. That does drive innovation. but we really strive to be the best we can today, be better tomorrow, and make sure we provide our customers a great experience, and we're really looking out for them.
Can you talk about frequencies for a minute? You have a certain frequency that you buy at these auctions pretty much everywhere in the country. Do you like that frequency? Why are you using the frequency you're using?
There's a lot of frequency out there. You can see those auctions, and they're very expensive. For our 4G LTE, we're very fortunate to get the 700 megahertz. This is all public stuff. You can go to Google. You can see. Well, we bought that piece.
It wasn't public before. It's public now.
Well, it is. I mean, this is when the FCC sells it, the government, they publish it out. We were the bidder. We bought a contiguous piece across the entire United States and Hawaii. We feel that that's a great piece for us because we don't have to mismatch technologies. And 700 is a great place to be because it really does have great building penetration, great propagation. It's lower, so it really does give a great customer experience. And it does simplify devices. If you have to have a device that does 15 things, it's going to be much more complex than something that does one. And having our frequency kind of consolidated for 4G in that has been very nice. So we were glad to get that. Definitely, the FCC was glad to
have the money.
Yeah, to have the money. But I think really the piece is communication becomes more and more critical. We do work very closely with agencies, and some of them build their own networks, but we definitely work with them to help provide the community with the connectivity, the services, the data services they need. And not just today. We have to be thinking, what does that look in 5 years?
Sure.
You talk to Cedric. I mean, when they look at this, they're 20 years out. And sometimes, I mean, they, like you say, sometimes they say, well, this is what it looked like, and sometimes you got to make adjustments. 5 years ago, not that many people carried smartphones. Today, almost everyone does. So that requires that you're continuing to put money in that network and building it to deal with those devices. And then now people have tablets. You see people carrying 3 devices.
Yes.
That network. Yeah, I carry more than that. But I think it's important that we're continuing to revisit that and say, really, are we doing what's best for our customers, and are we providing the level of service that they really need?
So, what about the LTE? How does that differ technologically from, the previous system? And does it require different kinds of cell sites, different kinds of switching equipment? And do you see everything going in that direction with the end of the previous technology? How does that work in the sort of the technological pipeline?
Yeah, the thing is sociology travels much more slowly than technology. We change. I'm a creature of habit. If I stop and get coffee, they're not open. I'm like, hey, minor thing. But we do see technology changing. We really are going to a world that everything's IP. We kind of think about today. We think, well, a voice call, a text message is something else, and a picture message, a video message. If I'm surfing the web, we look at that differently. But more and more, we're starting to see that this is just all data. And we look at larger pipes, and we start looking at things of quality of service to make sure that the video is perfect, that when I'm on a call, there's no latency, that, if I'm downloading a web page and I lose half a second, I'll never know. But if I'm on a call talking to you, it is. So we're continuing to see that evolution of that mobile IP convergence. And I think it's going to bring some really wonderful things to customers. Some of the developers are really excited to see that what the new networks can do to shorten development time, put applications. And we've seen that. I mean, apps, if you looked 4 years ago, apps were, in 2 years. Now it's today. Well, you talk to somebody, 2 months, it's out. They have 3 revisions in a month, and it becomes a great device.
And businesses, even offices, even relatively small businesses have their own apps, which give you direct access to something they want to show you. The creativity is unbridled these days. That's why I want to design apps. I'm sure you'll show me how to do that.
Well, and I think, and I'll give you an example. I can't say who, but my bank. I mean, they own me, man. They've given me so much access. That app, I can do anything on it. I mean, I don't want to go to the bank. Not that I don't like my bank, but if I can do anything on there.
Sure.
And that's just one example of how a business can say, hey, what do my customers need? How can I provide it for them? How can I get information in quickly into my management team so I can get it to my customers? And it really does change that customer loyalty and that level of service that you can provide. And it really saves you money. Because if I can sit there and go to my app and I can, look at balances and transfers and all those things, and there's tons of them. I mean, whether it's weather, booking airlines, changing flights, shopping, there's so much out there that really can make a difference. So if you're gonna make apps, it's a great place to be.
The thing is that when the computer got mature, I mean, to the extent it did, the laptop got mature. You could sit at home in your skivvies and reach out to the world. You could learn things, you could command things, you could interact with things everywhere by never leaving your chair. What's different about the cell phone, the smartphone, and all these apps is you can leave your chair. You can go somewhere else, having nothing to do with what the job, the task that you're using the phone for. So what it means is you can double track everything, and you can be here doing there, and that's the difference between the cell phone and the anyway, I wanted to ask you about video. Years ago, I think it was in the Mrs. Robinson movie, The Graduate, there was a scene on the swimming pool, and the prospective father-in-law was talking to the prospective son-in-law, and he said, Dustin Hoffman was the guy. He said, you've got to go into plastics. The future is plastics. And I guess in the 60s, maybe that was so, to a limited extent. But now, the future is video. And video is the way people learn. Whether something came out recently about Ronald Reagan, how he didn't have briefings and he didn't have memos come to him to teach him what was going on in the world. His staff made videos for him, and he would watch videos. That's the way. And now you can learn anything you want on videos and so forth. And live videos all the more. And you are conveying those live videos because more and more people are looking at them, in applications and rather in devices that come across your network. Yeah. And so that's an awful lot of data. I mean, how would you keep up with that? My prediction is next 5 years we're going to have those multiples more of videos. People are going to learn and find out things, all manner of things from videos. This is going to be a lot of data, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm one of those people. I just finished a house remodel, and there was a few times I had to go out there and go, okay, I think I know what I'm doing, and watch an expert. And there's those, but I think definitely data usage is increasing, and it's exponentially. It's not growing in very small segments, and that's really why we made the commitment to invest in LTE. LTE's huge improvement as far as bandwidth. The speeds are amazing. 5 to 12 down. That's just what we advertise. It can deliver network conditions. I mean, it's amazing. And uploads 2 to 5 meg. We see people that are really doing video off their phone. You see these cameras, for example, yours, the Bionic. I mean, it's got a forward-facing camera. It's got a back-facing camera, 8-megapixel camera, but it can do 1080p video if you need it to. So I think video is going to continue to grow. We are starting to see companies now that instead of doing conference calls, they're doing video. Families are doing it, at home with the grandbaby or at the park. So I think we continue to look at that. We definitely are seeing these networks become more robust, and the data needs are going up. So I hear you. I think video is going to be a big one. There are times we don't like video. I mean, if I'm in my skivvies or sitting on the couch, maybe not. But definitely we see mobile entertainment. We see people that are moving more and more. And I think even things like training. You think about, companies, safety trainings or, how to do things. We see huge companies that are saying, hey, if I could deliver that content to your phone, wow, what a great way to do it. And there's some great partners we work with to do that. We're seeing companies now that are doing, the big TV vans, now that are just in a box because we have those kind of data speeds. And that's that whole piece of that network. The network does have the ability to control and give everybody a good piece. And that was really the reason from 3G to 4G. We needed bigger pipes because customers are using more. They're watching movies. They're sending data. Think about cloud services. Everybody's syncing their music to the cloud. Everybody's putting their documents to collaborate. I'm a big fan of one of the products because I'll actually put a document, send everybody a link, and everybody can get it. Everybody has the right version. Somebody's not on 4.2. But we're looking at 5. So we're seeing data usage go up, and that's one of the reasons you saw the investment like we've put up there in the Verizon Wireless Super Switch is that we know that that's the future. We've seen voice data, the voice revenue starting to slow down, but the data revenues, everybody's got a tablet or an iPad or an iPhone or an Android phone. So we see the writing on the wall, and we're building for that.
Yeah, I want to be clear that the switch that you showed me services the Hawaiian Islands, all the Verizon traffic, which could be a lot of other providers coming into it. The carriers that we talked about that originally connect with the switch, but all the Verizon traffic for all the cell phones, all the iPads, all the tablets, they all come through that building, and they go anywhere in the world, of course.
That's the command center. So that's the thing with IP today. The newer networks are really using a flat IP technology, so they don't have to come back. Now, you definitely need something that's the master controller. You look at a company, the president may not be out building the stuff, but he's keeping control. And that's what that building does. It's constantly monitoring and making sure there are times that devices are connecting out to networks or corporate networks and things. But that's kind of the heartbeat. That's monitoring, checking, making sure all those services are up. We do have proprietary stuff there, but we do have equipment that's continuing to test. It's creating messages, it's checking the data connections, it's going out and checking our services proactively. So we're not waiting for Jay to call and go, "Hey, I can't send a text message." We're monitoring this network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to make sure that it acts as we advertise, and that there's a beautiful plan that if something's not working, which things are going to break, that's Murphy's law instead of Moore's law. We need to have those pieces in place that they fail over, and you go from working to the protected side where everything just stays up and works.
Well, Ed, thank you for a wonderful tour of that facility. It was really changed my whole way of thinking about telephones and cell phones, and about how it all works, and how you have to engage in this kind of contingency planning and thinking into the future to make it happen. I know it isn't easy, but I think Verizon's been very successful at it, knock wood. And I wish everybody could see the switch, and hopefully this discussion and the footage we took will help them, see it at least to some degree as well as I did.
It was our privilege to have you, and hope you really saw the commitment we have to our customers.
I did indeed. Thank you so much for the tour and for coming down today.